Okay, so we are going to complete the square. So I'm going to give you the steps. So I think I'm calling this 3-2C. I'm going to go with that.
I did it today.
Okay, so completing the square. I know you are, sometimes we wonder, why do we learn so many different ways to solve quadratics? Can't we just have one and stick with it? The problem is, you could, but you're gonna if you solve every single quadratic with the quadratic formula, you're taking 10 minutes too long for every problem. Because some of them, if I can factor it, I'm done with factoring in like 2 seconds. So no, I don't want to solve every single one the same way. So why don't I factor all of them? Some of them can't be factored. I wish they could all be factored, but they can't, right? So completing the square is another method that will work on any quadratic ever, but it's longer than factoring. So if I can factor it, I want to do that. And the downside, and so the pro is that you can do it on anything. A con is going to be if your B number, whatever that number is, if that's odd, now you gotta deal with fractions and it's kind of annoying. You can still do it, it just becomes more complicated. So if B is odd, it's annoying. Still doable, just annoying. Okay, so let me give you the steps. We'll walk you through an easy one, then we'll do a medium one, then we'll do a hard one. You ready? You with me? Everybody jazzed up? You ready to go? Okay, let's try it. So let me give you, maybe we'll write out the steps kind of as we go. So let's start with a nice easy one. Of course, I don't have a nice easy one right in front of me. Oh, that one's no good. I'm just gonna make one up. Give me 1 second. Come up with something nice. Okay. So this one's super simple. This is one that we could solve by factoring, but we're not going to because we just want to get used to how this works. Okay, so how to. Step 1, you have to make sure that it's set equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, make it equal to 0. The other thing that's kind of inconvenient is that A has to be 1. But Miss Sabia, I thought you said you can do it on any quadratic. You can. If A is not 1, you basically force it to be 1. We'll do an example in a few minutes. So I'm just going to add in here, force A to be 1 if it isn't. Let me put A in quotes so you don't think it's the word. Now, once those things are done, now you're ready for the good stuff. Does anybody remember how you started completing the square? You move C to the other side, just C.
So then it's like
Move C to the other side. Oh, so you know what? I actually kind of don't like my step one. So I guess if C is already over there, you don't need to move it there and then move it back. Ah, sorry. Yeah. Let's change it to, can you just say get in order? Let's do that. Sorry, because yeah, why would you move C back and forth if C is already over there? I don't know. Sorry. All right, so now we're going to move C to the other side. So I have a positive 8, so I need to subtract 8 from both sides. And I'm going to leave a space where that was. I leave that space kind of open.
And then you square 6, and it would be 36, and I think it's a negative 30. No, possibly.
And you're right that there is a square that's about to happen, but you have to do something first.
Oh, you have to cut it in half.
Yes, you take half of B and then you square it. Okay, so in step 4, we are going to take 1/2 of B and square it. Add that number to both sides. You're going to add it. Yep. I'm going to refer to this as the magic number. So if I am saying that, that's what I mean. So if I go back to our example, B is 6, right? So half of 6 is just 3. So 3 squared is 9. So 9 is this magic number that I'm referring to. So all I have to do is add 9 to both sides. So I'm going to add it in that space that I left. I'm going to do a +9 right in there and a +9 over here. Because whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other, right? You can't just add 9 to one side, not the other. But there it is. So do you see right here why if B were an odd number, how it complicates things? Because now you're taking half of an odd number and squaring it. And that's more annoying. Doable, sure, of course you can do it. But do you want to? Not if I can avoid it. Now, what's so cool about this method is that the left-hand side is always going to be what we call a perfect square trinomial. What? Check this out. What are factors of 9 that add to be 6? 3 and 3. They're always going to be exactly the same. Always. And if they're not, you did it wrong. It's always the same. So instead of writing x + 3 times x + 3, I can write it as x + 3 squared. Ah! And then on the right-hand side, I just combine those two numbers. That's just a +1. So step 5 is to just factor the left and right as whatever the factor is squared. And now we're so close to being done because all we have to do now is, everybody remember? How can I undo squaring something? Square root. I literally come in here and take the square root of both sides. So step 6 is take square root of both sides. So what happens when I do that on the left? The square root and the square just cancel them each other out. So all I'm left with is x + 3. That's it. Now here's what you need to remember. When you are solving an equation and you take a square root, you have to remember both roots. We talked about that when we were simplifying square roots. Like if there's no sign in front of it, then we just want the principal factor. but you put that there. So you really want both of them. So the answer is positive. Gosh. The square root of 1 is 1, right? But I need to take both roots. So there will always be a plus minus that I need right there. Always. So actually, let's put a big star over here. Always take positive and negative roots. Always, always, always. That goes for any time you are solving an equation. If you write the square root thing, you need both roots. If the square root thingy is already on the paper, then you don't take them. But if you're writing it, you take them, both of them. And now I'm so close to being done. If I want to get x by itself, the only thing left to do is minus that 3 to the other side, and then I'll just have to simplify. Now, when we do this, here's kind of how we write this. I subtract 3 from both sides. Usually, I mean, you're going to get the same number whether you put the minus 3 over here, but usually whatever we do, we stick it up in front of the plus minus. So it looks like this, -3 plus minus 1. But you're not done because you can actually do that. So -3 plus 1 is going to get me one of my answers, which is -2. And then -3 minus 1 gets me that -4. So, my friends, there are the two answers. And what do those numbers mean again? What even are they? Say it again. Now we're talking. That's the points where the parabola crosses the x-axis. I don't know if other people said it. Joe was the only one that I heard. When you have a parabola, if you graph it, if it's going to cross the x-axis, it's going to do it at these two numbers in this case. So now I know, oh, cool. If I were to go back and graph this parabola, I already have 2 points. I already know it's crossing the x-axis at -2 and at -4. Wow. I know, it's so cool. If I had an imaginary number in my answer, I would know, oh, this thing is never going to touch the x-axis. If I got the same answer twice, what does that tell me? Say it again. Right, the vertex would be right on the x-axis at that point. Fancy, 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 fancy. Okay, so there are the steps. Let's do another kind of easy one just to sort of sink our teeth into it. So let me make up another one. Let's do. Okay. So another example, I'm going to sneak it in over here. Let's do, sometimes they start off with a y equals. So let's do that. Y equals x squared plus 2x minus 48. If you have a y equals, you just replace the y with a 0. Remember what I'm finding? I'm finding x-intercepts. Don't I find them by plugging in 0 for y? Yes. So I'm going to replace that with a 0. And I also like the equal 0 to be on this side instead of that side. So I'm going to rewrite it like this because that's how I do it. Because I'm old and I am not changing my ways now. All right, so now step 1 is all done. It's in order. I'm ready to go. I want to force A to be 1. If it isn't, we got lucky again and it already is 1. I meant for it not to be. Do you want me to change it so it's not? I'll just do another example. It's fine. All right, so A is already 1, so that's cool. I got to move C to the other side. So let's do that. This time, how do I move C to the other side? How do you do that? I'm going to add 48 to both sides this time, right? So I'll add 48, and then I'll have a positive 48 on that side. Leave myself a space because I know I'm going to fill it in with a magic number. So that's where we're at. What is that magic number? It's 1 this time. I want to take half of b, which is 1, and then 1 squared just so happens to still be 1, right? But I did both steps. I took half and I squared it. So my magic number, by the way, the magic number will always be positive. Even if that number is negative, it doesn't matter because you're going to square it, right? So even if that number was negative and half of it was a negative number, once I square it, it's positive. So your magic number will always, always, always be a positive number. So I'm going to add 1 here and I'm going to add 1 here. All right, cool. Now what do you do? Yeah, you're going to factor that left-hand side. So factors of 1 that add up to be 2. One and 1, right? So instead of writing it twice, I write it like this, x plus 1 squared. On the right-hand side, 48 plus 1 is just 49. And now what do I do? Square root both sides, yes. So on the left, you have x plus 1. On the right, you have to remember positive and negative 7. You need both roots. If you forget, every single quadratic should have 2 answers, right? So if you don't put that plus minus, you're only ever going to have 1 answer. So hopefully when you stop and ask yourself, hey, I should have 2 answers. Where are they? Oh yeah, I forgot the plus minus when I took the square root. Anyway, so now I'm here. All I gotta do is minus that 1. Try and get in the habit of taking that number and just sticking it up in front. So we're gonna do -1 plus minus 7. So what does that mean my answers actually are? Oops. 6 and -8. I agree. Is everybody okay where those are coming from? You're just going along the top. -1 plus 7 gets me 6, and then -1 minus 7 gets me -8. And then there they are. All right, a tougher example you ready for? Okay, I'll go not that tough yet. And then I'll make it worse. Give me a sec. Let's do this. Okay, 2x squared minus 16x minus 40 equals 0. All right, everything's in order, that's fine. But in step 2, it says force A to be 1 if it isn't. A is not 1 this time, so how can I make it be 1? I can divide everybody by whatever A is. So in this case, A is 2, right? So I can divide, and I got to do both sides. So I got to do everybody here gets divided by 2, and over here I get divided by 2. Luckily, that's not so bad because dividing 0 by 2 is just 0. So, and everything happens to be even here, so it ends up really not being that bad. But you see how it could result in fractions right here. And that's annoying, but not impossible. So let you try this. Go ahead and see if you can finish this. Okay, did you get an answer? 2 answers? What are they? 10 and -2 you claim. I think those are right. So real quick, we're gonna move C to the other side. So I get a 20. Half of this is -4, but when you square it, it's a positive 16. So we're gonna add 16 to both sides. On the left, factors of 16 that add to be -8. What's that?
We have a question.
Yeah.
Wait, how'd you get the 16 again?
You want to take half of this number, so that's -4, but then you square that number. So -4 squared gets me a positive 16.
Okay, thank you.
What are the factors of 16 that, Adam? -4, so I write this as x minus 4 squared. The signs matter, right? So then over here, that's just a 36. So check that line that you have is an x minus 4, and then a positive 36 over here. And now I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna square root both sides. So now on the left, I just have x minus 4. On the right, I need to remember positive -6. All I have to do is add the 4 over. And I write it like this. I'm gonna stick that 4 right in there, 4 plus minus 6. And then I actually can do that out, so I will. 4 plus 6 is 10, 4 minus 6 is -2, and I have my answers. Oh, by the way, I keep forgetting this. Of course you can check these answers. Thanks, math, especially when they come out nice. You can take 10 and plug it back into the original, and it should, in fact, work. So that's level easy. Shall we go to level medium? Oh, sorry, did you answer? Okay, level medium, here we go. I already came up with one. Where is it? Here it is. All right, we're gonna do x squared minus 8x plus 20 equals 0. Okay, try that. Give you a minute or two. Okay, you got an answer? I'll give you a hint. There should be an imaginary number involved. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna move C to the other side. What's the magic number this time? It's 16 again, right? Because I want half a -8, -4, square it is again a positive 16. So that should be the magic number that you added to both sides. On the left, oh, that's funny that this one just worked out to be the same thing. X minus 4 squared, right? Factors of positive 16, that adds to be -8. But on the right, that now adds to be a -4. All right, cool. Square root both sides. I get x minus 4. What does this become? What is the square root of -4? 2i. You still need positive and negative. So don't forget plus minus 2i. And now all I have to do is add the 4. And this is especially when we want to be shoving that number up in front. Because remember the I we want on the end. So our final answer should look like this, 4 plus minus 2i. You cannot go any further than that this time because they're not like terms, right? I can't do, so if you were trying to do 4 plus 2i and call it 6i, you can't do that. 4i plus 2i is 6i, but I don't have that. This is like saying 4 plus 2x. It doesn't become 6x, right? No, we just leave it. So that's your answer. You can't go any further than that. And then that tells me if I am graphing this thing, oh, this is never going to cross the x-axis. Does that make sense? I do want to do one where that middle term is odd. Okay. Now listen, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. If it is odd and I have my choice, I'm probably not going to do completing the square because it's annoying. Why I would do quadratic formula, right? Why would I deal with the fractions if I don't have to? But I just want to show you that you can. We'll do one that's not so bad. So let me come up with. Let's do. I need this to be, let's make that an 8. Okay. Yes. All right. Let's try this one. X squared plus 3x minus 40 equals 0. All right. We're going to walk through this one together. Step 1, move C to the other side. Easy peasy. We're going to add 40 to both sides. So that'll be a positive 40 on that side. Here's where things get weird. Half of 3, right? I know you just want to go to 1.5. I'm telling you right now, it's actually not a good idea to go into decimal. Fraction, this is one of the few cases where I actually think fractions are easier to deal with. And you'll see why when we get sorted to the end. And there's a pattern that happens here. So half of 3, isn't half of 3 just 3 over 2? Hello.
I didn't give a note, so, but I sent it. Wait.
Oh, that's fine. Do you have the worksheet from Friday? Okay, perfect. That's what we're not even really looking at it, so it's okay. No, they're not. I just realized we're not, but we will be looking at that for our homework. All right, so half of 3. Isn't that just 3 over 2? Right? Half of 3 is 3 over 2. So you know what? I'm going to jot some things down over here. Half of 3 is 3 over 2. What is 3 over 2 squared? What do you get when you take 3 over 2 and you square it? 9 over 4. That's my magic number, right? There's half of B, and now I've squared it, so it's 9/4. So I'm going to add 9/4 to both sides. Okay, now I know what you're thinking over on this left-hand side. You're like, how am I supposed to figure out factors of 9/4 that add to be 3? There's a pattern. Did you notice the pattern in the other ones? So hold this thought because I'm going to flip back to ones that we had already done. Look at this. Look right here. So look at this number and look at this number. Yes. This number always ends up just being whatever half of that, whatever half of that one is, that's what goes in here. So, all right, cool. Well, that I know. Whoa. Let's come back. So when you are doing this factoring thing, oh, my plus got smudged. Hold on. When you are trying to factor this left-hand side, it's always going to be x and then half of that number squared. That's how the perfect square trinomial business works. So that's not so bad, right? And then on the right-hand side, I do have to add 40 and 9/4. So let's get those common denominators. You know, I'm going to do it over here. So 40 over 1 plus 9 over 4. I'd have to multiply 40 by 4 over 4, right? So I get 160 over 4 plus 9 over 4. I get 169 over 4. You with me so far? Is this okay? Now, here's where you're thankful for once that we kept it in fractions, because watch what happens. When you square root both sides, on the left, x plus 3/2. On the right, what is the square root of this? It's just 13/2. That's really not so bad. That was nice. If I'm in decimal, it gets real kind of messy. And because what happens if your fractions aren't even nice decimals? What if they're like repeating decimals? I don't know. It gets too funky. I do not advise you ever going into decimal. And now all I gotta do is minus that 3/2 over. And it actually ends up working out a lot nicer than we expected. So I have a negative 3/2 plus minus 13/2. You can do that math, so you should. Negative 3/2 plus 13/2. Wouldn't that just be 10/2? What's that really? 5. And then negative 3/2 minus 13/2. That's a negative 16/2 or negative 8. Hot dog. How about that? Again, when they come out nice, that's your sign. That's like, hey, you silly goose, you should have factored that. So yeah, this one was factorable from the beginning, but imagine that it was one that couldn't be factored. You just go through all the steps. These will just come out to be gnarlier numbers. How are we feeling? We can complete the square. Do you remember doing this? You just gotta dust off those skills. Okay, so tomorrow we're gonna review all the different types: factoring, quad formula, completing the square. And you know what I kind of glossed over, which real quick, how do you solve, I don't know, it was just sort of like the weird timing of everything. How do you solve something like this? X squared minus 3 equals 7. Where all you have is an x squared and you don't have another x term. Yes, get the x squared by itself. Yeah, and then square root it. So this is called solving by square rooting, which you can do when all you have is an x squared and you don't have any other thingies. So square root both sides. So I literally just get, again, I took a square root, so it's positive negative square root 10. That's it. So I'm sorry that we didn't kind of spend a lot of time on those. I'll talk more about those tomorrow if you want, but is that okay? Do you remember this? Like if b is, if there is no b term, if it's just x squared? Is that all? Yeah? Okay, so let me give you some homework then. Why don't I'll have you do a couple problems like that. How about we do, oh, this works out great. On the front of this 3-2 worksheet, can you just do the odds just on the front, 1 through 11? So it'll give you a couple where it's just square roots. Oh, why am I showing you the answers? I don't know. This is the one I'm talking about, 3-2.
You put the answers online.
I did?
Yeah.
Whoops. Well, I mean. Oh, well.
Wait, what are we doing? Just the odds?
Just the odds on the front. So 1 to 11 odd. So the first 3 are just solving by square rooting. So just get the squared thing by itself and square root both sides. Should we do number 1 together? No?
Yeah. And then number 7.
If you know what you're doing, then you don't have to pay attention to me. But just in case. So if you're looking at number 1, you're like, oh, cool, there's only an r squared. So I get r squared by itself. Let's add 5. Divide by 4. And now all I have to do is take the square root of both sides. And I'm done. Just always remember that you need the positive and negative root. I can't simplify the square root of 5, so I literally just leave it. So that's number 1. Positive, negative. 1 through 11 odd. So just that first left column. That's it. Now I guess 3 through 11. There is your number 1 for you. Yeah. Ah, let me give it to you. Does everybody else need this? Are you here, Tyler?
Yeah.
Oh. Anybody else need it?
Really.
All right, let me stop these films here.